Right now, without doing anything, your heart is beating, your lungs are pulling air, your immune system is quietly scanning everything that enters your body and deciding what belongs and what doesn't. You don't control any of it. Your body is running programs so old they were never written down, inherited, copied, passed forward through every generation between the first human and you. Most of those programs came from your ancestors, but not all of them. About 2% of your DNA is not human. Neanderthals are gone. That much everyone agrees on. They appear in museums under glass, low brows, thick bones, hunched over a fire. They lived in Europe and Western Asia for roughly 400,000 years. Then, around 40,000 years ago, modern humans arrived from Africa, and Neanderthals disappeared. The version most people carry is clean. We were smarter, faster, better at language and cooperation. We outcompeted them. They faded. We inherited the earth. But that 2% had to come from somewhere. Picture what it meant to leave Africa 60,000 years ago. Not an adventure, a survival problem. Modern humans had spent hundreds of thousands of years evolving on one continent. Their immune systems knew African pathogens, the bacteria, the parasites, the viruses that lived in that soil, that water, those animals. The body had fought those things long enough to build specific defenses. Eurasia was different. The continent had its own biological history. 200,000 years of Neanderthals living in cold forests, hunting different animals, drinking different water, breathing air thick with different pathogens, bacteria and fungi that had been evolving there since before modern humans existed. None of it had ever met an African immune system. The first modern humans to cross into Eurasia were walking into an environment their bodies had no record of. No medicine, no understanding of what to avoid. Just a body built for one world, arriving in another. Every settlement was an experiment. Every child born in that new landscape was a test the body might fail. They needed a shortcut. In 2010, a geneticist named Svante Pääbo and his team at the Max Planck Institute for Evolutionary Anthropology in Leipzig published something that stopped the field completely. They had sequenced the Neanderthal genome, the first time anyone had read the full genetic record of an extinct human species. And buried inside that sequence was a finding nobody expected. Between 1% and 4% of the DNA carried by every non-African person alive today is Neanderthal. Not a contamination error, not a statistical ghost. A direct biological inheritance passed down generation by generation for 50,000 years, all the way to the person reading this now. Somewhere in Eurasia, before Neanderthals disappeared, modern humans and Neanderthals had children together, and some of those children survived. It's like two groups meeting at the edge of a territory neither of them owns. One group has lived there for 200,000 years, the other just arrived. They exchange something, and the thing that gets passed forward isn't language or fire technique or the memory of a place. It's written into the blood. Here's what seemed true for a long time after that discovery. The Neanderthal DNA was vestigial, a footnote, a rounding error in the larger story of human expansion. Interbreeding happened, the genome proved it, but the genes that survived into modern humans were random leftovers, background noise from a brief, isolated encounter, the kind of thing that shows up in the data but doesn't actually mean anything. This interpretation had logic behind it. It had the weight of everything already believed about Neanderthals, that they were less sophisticated, less adaptable, ultimately less fit. If their genes had mattered, the theory went, natural selection would have spread them further. The fact that only 1% to 4% survived suggested the rest had been quietly removed, edited out by time. It felt like the science confirming what the museums already showed. In 2014, Sriram Sankararaman at Harvard Medical School published a paper that cut the legs out from under it completely. Raman's team didn't just confirm that Neanderthal DNA was present in modern humans, they mapped which genes had survived. They looked at where, across the entire human genome, Neanderthal sequences had been kept and where they had been removed. The results were not random. The genes that survived were almost exclusively immune system genes. Specifically, HLA genes, human leukocyte antigen genes, the part of the immune system responsible for identifying pathogens and deciding how to respond, and toll-like receptor genes. In 2017, Michael Dannemann and Janet Kelso at the Max Planck Institute identified 3 of them precisely: TLR1, TLR6, TLR10, still active in modern immune systems, still doing work, still recognizing bacterial and fungal threats that originated in Eurasia. The Neanderthal genes for brain structure didn't survive in large numbers. The genes governing bone density, facial structure, physical appearance, largely gone. What the body kept with striking consistency was the disease library. Not random leftovers, a targeted extraction. Think of it this way. Modern humans arrived in Eurasia carrying an immune system that had never been tested against local threats. Neanderthals had spent 200,000 years building a catalog, an internal record of every pathogen in that environment, written into their DNA through generations of exposure and survival. When the 2 groups met and had children, the body faced a choice it didn't consciously make. It kept the catalog. Everything else, the brow ridge, the bone thickness, the cold-adapted physiology, the body tested and, over generations, discovered immune intelligence, the hard-won record of 200,000 years of Eurasian disease. That it kept. That 2% you're carrying is almost entirely a medical archive written by a species that no longer exists. And the implication runs deep. Without it, the first modern humans to settle Eurasia may not have survived long enough to build anything. Not a civilization, not a population, not a lineage. Neanderthals didn't slow us down. They kept us alive. In 2020, a geneticist named Tony Capra at Vanderbilt University cross-referenced Neanderthal genome data against the health records of 800,000 living patients. One of those patients, anonymous, unremarkable in the data, carried a Neanderthal-derived blood clotting variant, a gene sequence that entered the human lineage somewhere in Eurasia 50,000 years ago during a brief encounter between 2 groups on a cold plain, passed forward through every generation between that moment and this one, showing up now in a modern blood panel, flagged by a machine in a hospital, attached to a name the ancient world never knew. She had no idea. Most people don't. Tonight, if your body starts running a fever, if it detects something that doesn't belong and begins the slow, invisible process of fighting it off, part of the machinery making that decision was written before your species had a name for itself. The alert system firing in your blood right now was calibrated in Eurasia by people who hunted with stone tools, who never saw a city, who disappeared from the surface of the earth 40,000 years ago and left almost nothing. Almost. The species you replaced is the reason you